10 years ago, Brandon Peller was driven to Chesapeake Regional Medical Center with a gunshot wound. By the time he got to the hospital, it was too late. His death was ruled a homicide, but trying to solve his murder has been like trying to put a puzzle together, but missing the pieces. It's been 10 years of seeking justice, and Brandon's mother, Monica Johnson, just wants his killer held responsible. Detectives at the Chesapeake Police Department have been working to find out who pulled the trigger, and they believe somebody knows what happened to Brandon. But nobody has come forward, and until they do, this is unsolved. The Brandon Peller story.
It's just, we feel numb. Police alerted the family Sunday evening after 24-year-old Brandon Peller was driven to Chesapeake Regional Medical Center with a gunshot wound.
I just know that he was dropped off, and that's all. I don't know nothing else.
Well, the crime scene where somebody gets shot at or gets murdered at or assaulted at, that's going to have most of our evidence. All that information is at the scene. We didn't have that.
According to police, a man said he came upon Peller, who was already shot, at an unknown location and took him to the hospital where he was dead upon arrival.
There's nowhere to know where he got shot at. Nobody knows where this kid got shot at.
I didn't want to believe it. I'm like, it's not my baby, it can't be. You know, you sure you got the right person? I kept asking that question.
There's some belief that quite possibly the person who dropped off Brandon was present when Brandon got shot. And as the investigation continued, there were other things that popped off that made it look very suspicious or problematic.
The why's not even important anymore. It's just more of the who.
There's still so many pieces that are left. I can't tell you the overall picture of it. There's some things that I was told, and then there were some things that I kind of could have an idea, but there's still not enough to put the whole thing together.
It's been hell. I've gone through the whole gamut of emotions, from anger to wanting revenge to just wanting to have this piece of it behind me and just knowing what happened.
Brandon Peller grew up in Virginia Beach, surrounded by loved ones. When his life was cut short, it sent shockwaves through his entire family. His mother, Monica Johnson, thinks about him every single day, but she can't find peace until his killer is caught.
He's my third out of 5, and now I'm gonna cry. I was young, and I already had 2 kids, and I was not decided what I wanted to do. But the moment he cried, that changed everything. I just held him to me, and I told him it's gonna be all right. We're gonna do whatever we gotta do to make this work. So that instinct just kicked in.
You know, Brandon was my shadow. He was my other half. We was twins, but with a 4-year age difference. Yep, he was my twin. Here.
The whole family unit, we're all close. And whenever we had a family gathering, which we had often, we always knew, okay, you gotta give Brandon, if it's 4 o'clock dinner, you gotta tell Brandon 2. And he'll get there about 4:30. He'll always say, I'm around the corner. And we're like, okay, is this the corner around the corner? Is this a corner in Chesapeake? Where are you at? So that's how he was, but he was the life of the party. So when he showed up, we all had a good time.
Brandon was a nice person. As I got to know him and got to talking to him and stuff, like, we was together. We fell in love and stuff. When I was pregnant with Damir, he used to help out a lot, just being a good dad. And after I had Damir, like, he was more involved. Like, used to call me on the phone, be like, how you make bottles, all that other stuff. Like, how you do this? How you change a pamper? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was like, well, that's something that you gotta have to do on your own. And I ended up having to show him and stuff.
This one? Yeah. That is Damir. That's his son right there. No, that's not his son, that's him. But it looks like his son all the way.
When he be sitting down talking to me sometimes, I just be like, dang, you talking like your daddy, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, he had just like him in some moments. No, but he looked just like him.
This year, we went to Mount Trashmore, all of us. And we all had on white tees and jeans. And we just took pictures for her birthday to surprise her and my grandmother. So we had fun. We had to keep the boys, they were horse playing. Well, as a matter of fact, I think his shirt's on backwards because he played around with them wrestling and got mud on his shirt. So they always horse played when they got together.
Definitely charismatic. When my two and the three of them got together.
You couldn't tell us nothing.
It
was like this. Me and my brother was like this, but when we got with Raina and Alex, all four of us was like this.
He was very giving, loving, loyal. Give his shirt off his back to anybody. My mom used to always say all the time, he could charm the draws off a snake.
It was guaranteed 12 o'clock. If it was your birthday, 12 o'clock, you get a phone call. Happy birthday.
I know my mom's birthday, he never missed a beat, no matter where he was. He made sure he called her on her birthday. That was it, just that final year. Her birthday's the day after he was killed. She didn't get that call. Me and two of my daughters, we were all doing homework, watching TV, just playing, laughing. My daughter's boyfriend, he called her and says, hey, the detectives come by here twice looking for you. And she's like, well, what does he want? He's like, I don't know. He left the card this time. She's like, well, what does he want? He's like, I don't know. He wants you to call. So he sent me a picture of the card and I called. And he's like, where are you at? I asked his mother, where are you at? So I'm at home in Portsmouth. I live in Portsmouth. He's like, well, give me your address. I need to come talk to you. So we went out on the back patio, and that's when he told me that my son had been killed. And I pretty much lost it, and I went to my knees. I'm like, it's not him. It's not him. He's like, we identified him. I'm like, I need to see him. He's like, you don't need to. We've already identified him. And I still didn't want to believe it. I had to still see him. And that's when I called everybody else in the family. They all came over.
And once they took my brother from me, I just felt like life was just ripped from me.
It's not easy. I mean, they're dealing with the loss of a loved one. So here I am talking to his mother about her son who was found deceased at a local hospital.
He told me that he had been taken to Chesapeake General Hospital, and he had been driven there by two friends. That one friend took him inside the hospital and the other was driving the car and left. The story that he got to them when they talked to him later was that they were going to go pick him up or meet him to take him to work. And they were flagged down by this random car. And the person said, I have your friend here in the car. So he had been shot, and they took him to the hospital immediately.
You have to keep in mind that this is somebody she raised. I mean, at one time, Brandon Peller was a little guy. He was 5 and 6 years old, playing in the yard, just having a good time. That's what I try to remember. I mean, I do have the kids, and they're not always going to be, the 25-year-old that you're looking at now. At one time, they were your 8-year-old perfect child. So that's how I think about it when I talk to the family and understand that, yeah, they're going to be grieving.
So they're not really sure where he was shot at because they have no scene because of what the friend's story the friends told. So we don't know really where it occurred.
There are some things we have got to get to eventually, like when's the last time they saw their son? What were they doing? Where were they going? Who were they with? Those questions will come out, no matter how they died, whether they were a bad person, a good person, they're still a human being. And you have to approach it as such.
I didn't want to believe it. I'm like, yes, that's not my baby, it can't be. You sure you got the right person? I kept asking that question. Sure you have the right person? And he's like, we're sure. How do you know? And then he showed me the picture of his tattoo, and I'm like, that's when I knew. For sure it was him.
I mean, it hurts. It still hurts to this day that he's gone. But as they say, can't never question God why, but I take care of my son like I'm supposed to, and he be watching us every day.
It tore us apart. It eats at me. His older brother blamed himself. He wanted it to be right. I wished it was him. We were scared. We didn't know why it had happened. We don't know who. We were scared. We didn't know if we should be able to go outside. What do we do? It's made us closer. We check in with each other more often. But it's a rift because he wasn't the glue, but he was the life of the party.
When we come back, Detective James Thomas with the Chesapeake Police Department shares why it has been so hard to catch Brandon's killer. With no crime scene, Chesapeake Police Detective James Thomas was fighting an uphill battle trying to piece together what happened to Brandon Peller. After 10 years, he will not stop until he finds out who pulled the trigger.
What's it like being a detective? It's kind of like you're putting a puzzle together without the benefit of looking at the box. You have no idea what it's going to be by the time you're done. Do I have to have all the pieces to see the puzzle? Not always, but you have to have enough of the pieces so when I look at the puzzle, I know that's what it is. So this particular day, I get notified by the supervisor within the criminal investigation section telling me that there's a subject at the hospital who's deceased. So that is our scene. So we go there and we start working it from that point. So our number one goal is always who's the victim. And because we do start at the hospital, we have to work it at least backwards to find a crime scene that's going to have most of our evidence. Hopefully, if it's a shooting case, it's going to have the casings or the bullets. At least we're going to know where to canvass, look for witnesses, look for videos. All that information is at the scene. And in this particular case, when I go to the hospital and I see the victim's deceased in the hospital, and I don't know where his injury occurred at, I lose out on all of that. There's nowhere to know where he got shot at. Nobody knows where this kid got shot at. They were just like, he's here, I was driving to pick him up, I got stopped on the side of the road, he's in a car, I brought him here. Really cloudy in the very beginning. So back to your puzzle analogy, I lose probably half the puzzle right off the beginning. I can't tell you where it happened. I don't have any location of blood. I don't have any location for a canvas. I can't try and find witnesses. I can't look for video. Shell casings, bullets, that's all not there. So we just start with the body and we try and find it. In this particular case, it took me about 3 weeks or so, 3 or 4 weeks to find a probable location of where this may have happened. We believe the offense happened in the city of Virginia Beach. There were several phone calls made the evening before his arrival at the hospital that put that phone in the area of that address. And that's kind of like what led us there. Went to that address, and by now the people who were living there when the incident occurred no longer live there. So you got all new paint in the house, new carpet in the house, there's all these new tenants in the house, all their own furniture. So realistically, I couldn't just go in there and rip their house apart to try and find evidence that we didn't even know was 100% going to be there. But again, in this investigation, as far as I'm concerned, the person of interest, until proven otherwise, is going to be somebody, he dropped them off at the hospital. That person's pivotal. That person should be wanting to do nothing but try and prove their innocence. The individual was at the hospital. Yes, he worked for doing light construction. His explanation of events was a little bit suspect in the beginning because of the way that he said it all happened. So he was at a job site, was wanting to contact Brandon Peller to come work with him on this job site. So Brandon said, yeah, he would come do it, or he would like to do it. When this individual went to go and pick up Brandon, for whatever reason, he ran into this other person, he said, who he asked to take him. So he's just got this is his story, another person's introduced who just happens to drive by, and this individual says, hey, can you take me to go to see Brandon? I don't want to burn up gas in my truck. This person does, take him to go see Brandon. Then his story gets to be, we're just driving along in Chesapeake, and then when we get to where Brandon's supposed to be, there's this other car on the side of the road where this guy gets out and says, hey, Brandon's been shot. And so they take Brandon from this vehicle, move him over to their vehicle, and then drive to the hospital where he's dropped off. This transfer is supposed to happen right there in Nels Ridge, in a neighborhood right across the street from the hospital. At that particular time, that's what they're saying to us. And no, it's not believable to us at all, but we have got to make sense of it. To have people lie to me, it's not shocking. That's just what seems to be, people want to do that. They just don't tell the truth. And as the investigation continued, there were other things that popped up that made it look very suspicious or problematic. Here we have, if you will, Brandon Peller at Chesapeake Regional Hospital, okay? He owned a car. He owned a silver Mercedes. That car was found in the southern end of Chesapeake, down in the Ballahag area of our city. So we got the car, searched the car, no evidence in it we could find. And then the car that was used to drop off Brandon was I believe it was a Nissan, and it was found in Virginia Beach. There was some blood in the car, nothing else of value in the car that we know of. There was no bullet found in the car, no shell casing in the car. Usually if somebody is shot in a car and if the bullet goes, unfortunately, through the victim, it's going to exit the car somewhere. No evidence of that. So it, on the surface, just appeared. It's a car that somebody put somebody in who was bleeding, and then they used it to transport the person. The apartment complex it was found in had no connection to anybody I was talking to. So you could just visually look at that. You have the suspect here at the hospital dropped off by one person. That deceased person's car is miles away down here in southern Chesapeake. The car used to drop him off is miles away up in another city. Why? You know, it just doesn't make any sense. There's some belief that quite possibly the person who dropped off Brandon was present when Brandon got shot. That's probably more plausible and more likely that he was with him when he got shot, put him in a car, drove him straight to the hospital. So the next step on an investigation like this is I have the person who's deceased. I have an individual who's telling me a story about how he came across his deceased friend. Now I have to find the evidence, the true, tangible, hands-on evidence that's either going to back up that story or disprove that story. And that was our next step to do. That's why I got to find the crime scene, looking for bullets, looking for casings, looking for the witnesses, looking for the videos. Those are real, true, tangible pieces of evidence that prove cases. There's still so many pieces that are left. You know, I can't tell you the overall picture of it. I mean, there's some things that I can prove. There's some things that I was told, and then there were some things that I kind of could have an idea about, a speculation, if you will, about it, but there's still not enough to put the whole thing together. If anybody knows anything about the death of Brandon Peller, we welcome the phone calls. Tell us, either you were his friend, you saw him that night before he was murdered or before he was killed, you saw him that morning. If anybody knows anything, who he was with, that would be information that we'd be willing to take.
It's been hell. I've gone through the whole gamut of emotions, from anger to wanting revenge to just wanting to have this piece of it behind me and just knowing what happened. To where at this point now, I'm no longer angry. I just want to have a day in court where I can know who and why. The why is not even important anymore. It's just more of the who. I mean, I don't even care about the why anymore, because why is not going to change anything. But I feel it may take a little bit more time, and I pray that I see it before I leave this earth. I just want justice.
September 16th marked 10 years since Brandon Peller was killed. In that time, his family has gotten closer, bonding over his memory and the hope that someday someone will be held responsible.
I talk to Brandon every day. If I'm having a bad day and he's around, I can tell him. I hear him say "Ma" sometimes. So I know he's around. I know he's here watching over us. And I'll say, "Hey, Brand, I know you're here." And I love him and I miss him.
And Damir has his down times too sometimes about his dad. Sometimes he wonder what happened or what actually really happened. It's sometimes that he'd get upset and he'd just be like, I wish he was here. You get what I'm saying? And I wish that too. Everybody wish it. The family wish it, you know? He's watching over him.
If you know anything that can help detectives solve this case, call the crime line at 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP or use the P3 Tips app. And if you have a story you'd like us to investigate, email us at investigates@wavy.com. I'm Maria Elena Baloris. Good night.